chicken and pork and chicken livers. So first we're going to grind the meat. And if you have one of these grinder attachments for your stand mixer, very good. Or you could have a hand grinder, but we want to grind the meat with the coarsest blade possible. And we're grinding 6 ounces of chicken thighs. You can use this plunger to push the meat through. It's already ground the chicken livers and the pork and some fat back. If you don't have a grinder, ask your butcher to grind the meat for you. And don't buy the pre-ground meat that's in the grocery store. You want a coarser grind. And now to this, add 3 caramelized shallots, 1 ounce of fat back. It's the fat right off the pig's back. 3 ounces of chicken livers cut up into cubes. This is coarser than the ground meat. And 8 ounces of pork shoulder, also cut into cubes, and 8 ounces more of chicken thighs. This is very similar to a country pate mix. This kind of meat mix has to be very well seasoned. Half a teaspoon of ground coriander, a half a teaspoon of allspice, a tablespoon of thyme leaves, a tablespoon of sage leaves, 2 teaspoons of salt, a half a teaspoon of black pepper, sliced Sicilian pistachios, half a cup, and one last spice, 1/4 of a teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg. To top it all off, 2 tablespoons of your best brandy. Now mix this all up and put that right into the refrigerator. So now we're going to make our pastry, and it's a very different pastry from pâte brisée. We need 3/4 of a cup of bread flour and 3 3/4 cup of all-purpose unbleached flour with 1½ teaspoons of salt, 3/4 of a stick of butter, and I've cut that into little 1/4-inch pieces. It doesn't have to be as icy cold as pâte brisée because you're going to be cutting this in by hand. And oh, by the way, we have 3½ ounces of pork lard melted in 1/2 cup of water. Now, as soon as that lard is melted, remove from the heat and pour over your dry ingredients. Stir this all together. We need 2/3 for the bottom and sides of the pan and 1/3 for the top. So once you get this into a large enough round, roll this pin is too short, so I'm rolling it over a bigger pin, and roll it right into an 8-inch springform pan. A crack or 2 will be easily patched. So I'm going to just use my pin to take off the excess. The excess, by the way, can be used for decoration. So just fit this nicely into your pan. So now I have my bottom crust. I'm rolling out my top crust. And before we fill this, we should egg wash the entire inside of the case. You want this case to give structure to the pie so it doesn't collapse upon release. There. All done. Now we can fill this with the meat filling. It smells so good. Get this into a nice flat layer. And now, get the top on. You want this to be about the same thickness as the sides, a little less than 1/4 inch. And this can be laid right over the top. And just use the same technique of cutting with the rolling pin. Just press with your fingers around the edge. Very nice casing, don't you think? And then you use this same pastry and cut out some decorative objects, some fluted leaves, and continue rolling and cutting leaves until you have the entire edge decorated. So just score the leaves, knife mark right along the center, and now we need to make 2 vent holes. One right in the center, and I'm just using the handle of a wooden spoon there, and one right here. This one actually acts as a vent hole during baking, but it's also the hole in which we're going to pour our gelatin, which fills in any honey inside the pie. Now this goes right into a 375-degree preheated oven on a baking sheet and bake until the crust is golden and thermometer inserted through the vent reads 160 degrees. That takes 80 minutes. So now the pie has been in the oven for 80 minutes, and we're going to release the spring form. Good. It looks great. It smells even better. So now, with your egg wash, brush the tops, sides, and this goes right back into the oven for another 15 minutes. We found that if we egg wash prior to this, the pie just got too dark. So now, to make the gelatin that's going to go into this hole right here in the top, 1 package of gelatin, soften it a little bit, and 2 tablespoons of cool water. And I have a half a cup of chicken stock heating this little pot, and this goes right into the stock. We want to dissolve the gelatin completely, and once it is dissolved, use a funnel like this. The pie has been out of the oven for 2 hours. This will gel, and then when you slice the pie, there will be no empty holes. And now the entire pie has to refrigerate overnight at least. This pie gets better after a couple days. I like serving a meat pie like this with Dijon mustard, cornichon. When you're looking for something extra special, make a meat pie.